All right, it is 7 o'clock, so I'd like to call the Town of Farmington um, regular Town Council meeting on January 27th, 2026 to order. Dave, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Item B, public comments. If anyone here would like to come up and make a public comment, you've got 5 minutes. Step up to the microphone and give us your name and your address. Thank you.
Hi, Dean Delatch, 29 Basswood Road, Farmington. First, I'd like to thank all the members of the Town Council for their dedication and support for the town. Sometimes I think we as residents forget that you are all volunteers, giving freely of your time, energy, and talents to help make Farmington the wonderful community that it is. And kind of in that spirit, I'm sure you all know other people who have also made meaningful contributions to Farmington and Unionville residents. Last year, an organization that I proudly am a volunteer and vice president of the board for, Hope Partners of Farmington, held an event that we called Hope's Heroes. And it was in part a celebration of one of the founding members of the organization, Hope Emery. The event was held to honor and celebrate the contributions of individuals in the community who've made significant contributions either to the town or its residents. Many of the names I'm sure you'll recognize. The honorees last year were Betty Anderson, Ida Franklin, Kate Brady Benson, Joanne Lawson, Patty LaBouthier, Nancy Parent, Jean Pickens, George Ryder, Pat Robotham, Paul Robotham, Marcy Shepard, and Nancy Walker. The event was so well received that we're doing it again. And it's going to be on Friday, April the 10th at 6 o'clock at Farmington Gardens. So my ask tonight, I'm not at this meeting asking for more money for Hope Partners. You've all seen our letter about that. But rather to ask you and actually all town residents to support this event by first nominating individuals who have made a meaningful contribution to the town or its residents. And second, hopefully being able to attend the event to not only celebrate the achievements of these often unsung heroes in our town, but also to help obviously support Hope Partners of Farmington, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that has been supporting some of the most vulnerable of our residents for over 60 years. I have some information on the event as well as our nomination form that I'll pass out. And also, of course, you can find additional information on the event on the website, which is HPOF, Hope Partners of Farmington, hpof.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Marie Perouse. I live at 65 Forest Street in Unionville. I want to say it's probably the best place I've ever lived so far. I love all the people here. I'm here also on behalf of Hope. I won't go into the details of my husband's illness. It's long past. Forward to happiness in the future. But while I was taking care of him, I needed some supplies to be able to support him. He was a big guy. I needed a walker. Most important, I needed a bed rail, which I got from Hope's office. And we needed a special shower chair. All of this is provided to the community as well. And I believe we go throughout the whole state of Connecticut now. And shortly after Norman passed, even though I live with my youngest daughter and her family, and I get the best treatment any mom could ever get, there were days when the children were in school and everybody else was at work, and it got pretty lonesome for having breakfast or, you know, that first cup of coffee and there's nobody there to talk to. And I ran into a friend who said, you know, you don't have to eat alone. You could come down to congregate meals. So I went in one Friday. I've kind of become a permanent fixture down there. And I enjoy the meals. I've made some really beautiful friends. Little Barbara, who sits next to me, always saves a seat for me. You know, I can't sit anywhere else. And one or two other ladies that, you know, we compare notes about our great grandchildren. I met Fran St. Pierre. Strange thing, she was married on the same day, same year that my husband and I were, 1.5 hours later than us. So I tease her about being married longer. I ran into, I also met a couple there that I bowled with 40 years ago. They're still bowling. I'm not. And about a month ago, I ran into a lady who just joined us. She grew up in New Britain, where I was born and raised. She and her husband were very friendly, excuse me, with my brother Bill. And so we have a lot to compare notes with. And I'm telling you this because I want you to see the importance of the congregate meals. It's not just going down to get an inexpensive meal, and most of them are really good, but it's the camaraderie, it's meeting new people, it's filling the void of being home alone. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for sharing.
Hey there, I'm Fred Tampassis from 36 Carriage Drive, and I'm here just to express some support for some of the strategic plans that are drafted by the council. So in particular, the Meadow Road sidewalk. I know that typically for issues like this, there's a vocal minority and maybe a silent majority. So I'm representing one of the, I guess, silent majorities. Figured I'd pop in. Not sure if I'm going to be around for the eventual hearing on this if it comes to that. But just wanted to express it as a father of 2 young boys that live, you know, in one of the neighborhoods that abuts or is off of Carriage. And just, I remember even during COVID trying to walk, you know, our carriage, like, our stroller, like cattywampus along the side, trying to get to the trails. It's an awesome place, to live, and it's an awesome spot for a sidewalk, to connect the trails to the east and Westwoods to the west, and a bunch of neighborhoods in between. You know, we're on, you know, parent group chats where we're keeping tabs on if it's going to keep moving forward or not. There's a lot of excitement. Granted, you know, we're not the landowners that are going to be impacted, but I just wanted to convey our support for the public good of that project, because sometimes a lot of folks can't make it for that. And so in addition to that, there was some additional discussion around investigating cell coverage in that neck of the woods as well, which I am a big proponent for. So in the Carriage Drive neighborhood, it's a dead zone. You could probably draw a line from Westwoods to West District, and it's tough there. So I am in support of anything that the town can do to potentially site a tower that would help us out, especially like, you know, kid pickup, trying to coordinate. Are you there? Did you get them? What's going on? It's tough. We make do, but that would be good. And then lastly, this is like not a priority really at all. But I believe it was 4 or 5 years ago, Frontier started pushing broadband out throughout the community. I've had a spool of fiber hung on a post in Carriage for probably 3 years now. You call them, it's a call center. They don't know what's going on. You look at the town website and it's the presentation from however long back when they came and gave their spiel. If we could get an update on that, or even just have the town nudge Frontier in any capacity to find out what's going on, that'd be much appreciated. But again, bigger fish to fry. So thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
Tim Kelly, 62 Westview. I was originally scheduled to do a presentation on global warming this evening, but instead I got some other comments. In regards to the January 20th council meeting minutes, they didn't seem to accurately reflect some of the comments I made. So I did comment that I felt that the existing football and track facilities were not in imminent need of being replaced. I also said that I did not think the scope of the current high school building committee should be expanded. I don't think it should be. But there's a funny line in here. I'm not sure where it came from. It says, he, I guess that's me, expressed the opinion that the town should discontinue ongoing contractor licensing requirements. I never said that. I don't think anybody in the meeting said that. So maybe that's a typo or something, but that needs to be fixed here in the minutes for the 20th. Now, in a curious move at your January 13th meeting, this council voted unanimously to set the town's debt policy at 10% of budget. Even though we've already exceeded that level last year, and we have not.
That's not what we did.
Oh, we didn't set it at 10%? What do we set it at?
I think they said maximum of 15 to 20, they bumped it up. That's,
No, that's different. You're talking about the rainy day fund.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about the
sorry,
debt
I shouldn't
limit.
interrupt, I'm sorry.
But that's okay. I don't mind going interactive.
Nope.
Always dangerous, though.
What?
Yeah, always dangerous.
Yeah,
All right.
I'll
Good
keep my mouth
stuff.
shut.
Okay, that's all right. We'll give you another shot later on. So we did set, or really we left the policy at 10%. But, I mean, we've already exceeded that in terms of last year. And based on our current debt load, we'll continue to exceed that limit for, I think, many years into the future. I mean, that's basically programmed in based on current debt plan. So I'm not really sure if that makes sense. At your, capital meeting coming up in February, I'm sure folks are going to ask to borrow a lot of project money. You'll need to be prepared to analyze those proposals, I think, with the eye of a cold, hard venture capitalist. Later this evening, you may have a discussion regarding the setting of budget targets for our town and school departments. Normally, I am very much in favor of setting strong targets, certainly with some flexibility. People often appreciate some leadership and structure on issues like this. At a minimum, it's always nice to get the answer key before the test. And on the positive side, you can tell departments if they come in under their target, they don't have to come in for a review. Just mail it in. And we can avoid budget padding hijinks as well. Of course, in the past, we would have put out, we would normally put out targets, and a department could come in 50% above the number, and sometimes we would just throw bouquets at the superintendent or responsible department head. A somewhat bizarre practice, honestly. And maybe later this year we can talk about the accountability model in Farmington. Anyway, since we have folks new and old in the process this year, it might be a good benchmark test to not offer specific target guidance and see what the teams come back with. If they ask what the target might be, just say that we've raised taxes 21% in 3 years, and the direction is to spend the minimum amount we can to do a decent job. let's see what their organizational awareness is, of the world outside their narrow department view. The potential downside with a free-form approach coming forward like this, you may need to spend more in-depth time in review meetings. Kathy understandably prefers to wrap up budget week in 2 days, and council members would need to do a lot more homework in advance in order to come prepared and ask penetrating questions. So I'll be interested to see how the council chooses to go this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Is there anyone else in chambers who would like to make a comment? All right, Kat, do we have anybody online?
Yes, we have one hand raised. We have Jay Tulin.
All righty.
Hi. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Hey, Jay.
Hello there. So
Name
just
it.
very quickly, I would be remiss if I didn't
Jay, name,
mention that today is
just name and
sorry?
address, please. Name and
Oh,
address.
Jay Tulin, 39 Timberline Drive. Sorry.
Jay, that's all right.
I should know that by now. Anyway, I would be remiss if I didn't let January 27th go by without a reminder that today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And in light of the rampant anti-Semitism going on throughout the world, I would just like to take a moment to call attention to the fact that today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. That's really all I have to say. Appreciate the few minutes.
Thank you for bringing that up, Jay. I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other hands are raised.
All right. Going once, going twice, third time. All righty, let's move on to item D, consideration of special comments, and let's go to D1.
So on D1, we have a presentation of our financial forecast from Joe, our finance director. And I think we left everyone a finance on your places.
They will all, as long as they can keep the mic, that would be great. All right, you're in.
I'm trying to speak into it. Point at it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is the financial forecast. Normally we do this every year. I don't think we did it last year, but wanted to start a little differently this year. And I have a handout, and some of the majority of the forecast or what you have in your handout is on there. There are some charts that did not look good or were useful on the screen. So you may have them in your handouts, but they may not be on the screen. I apologize for that. I do have a couple of additional extra handouts I can give to people in the public if they like them. I'd like to start this a little differently this year. I'm going to go backwards, and I want to just talk about the results of last year. And all this is in the audit report. You'll be getting sitting with the auditors in either the next meeting or soon thereafter, and they'll go over the audit with you. However, I just want to jump the gun on them maybe a little bit because, quite honestly, there's one part of the audit I don't think they spend a lot of time on. It's really the part of the audit that you should mostly be interested in, and that's the results of last year. So last year was a very good year. I did give you a preliminary report in September, but last year our budgeted revenues, or actual revenues, exceeded our budgeted revenues by $1.5 million. In other words, we had a very good year when it came to revenues. Our property taxes were almost $600,000 over budget, and there was two reasons for that. One, property tax collections were a little bit better than we thought they would be. There were less adjustments due to tax appeals than we thought, which is good and bad. And then also our supplemental motor vehicle taxes. Last year there were some major changes in the law. We didn't know how that was going to work out. It actually worked out. It wasn't as good as it was in prior years, but it wasn't as bad as we thought it would be. So we had a good year in terms of taxes. Grants from the state of Connecticut, we were $160,000 over budget. That was primarily the ECS grant. The downside of that is the state did not make audit adjustments last year to the ECS grant, so they may get rolled over into this year. Charges for services were up about $124,000. That was mostly building permits. And then interest income, we talked about this at the budget last year. We were almost $2 million over what we had budgeted. And that's simply because rates stayed high. I mean, rates stayed well into the 4s and some 5s up until this past summer when they did start to drop. The other key point on revenues is we did not use any of the fund balance appropriation. We had appropriated $1.2 million. We did not use any of it. So it stayed in fund balance and it rolled, it was in fund balance and available for the council to appropriate in future years. Next one. On the expenditure side, it wasn't as good as the revenue side, but still, just briefly, town budget was $33,000 under budget. The school budget was $2,400 under budget. Debt service, $182,000 under budget. And reason for that, I explained, was we had planned on 2 bond issues. We only did 1 bond issue, so we saved a lot of the issuance costs. We also had some interest savings because the rate came in slightly below what we thought it might come in. So the total on the expenditure side was $218,000 under budget. So again, 24-25 was a good year for the town overall. On page 3, I apologize, it's sideways. This is the actual document that you will see in your audit report when you in a couple of meetings. This is in the back of the book. You can see it's I think in the audit report it's page 86, so it gets kind of buried. But this is the reference for what I referred to just now on our results. If we can go to the next slide, fund balance. There's been a lot of talk lately about fund balance. You talked about it in January. There's some public comments about fund balance. So I just want to clarify or maybe educate as to what fund balance is briefly. Our fund balance at June 30th of 2025 was $30,285,156. Fund balance is made up of many components. It's we have what we call, in accounting terms, these are the components are non-spendable, we have $925,000 in non-spendable fund balance. You can't spend it, I can't spend it, nobody could spend it. It's basically an accounting, I don't want to say it's an accounting trick, it's an accounting technique. We also have what's called committed fund balance, and committed fund balance in the town as of June 30th, we had $309,000. That was for the Board of Education. The board voted last year to set aside some of their last year budget to carry forward into future years. They're allowed to do that by state law. So the committed fund balance was $309,000. We also have assigned fund balance. Assigned fund balance, we have 2 different categories in our financial statements. We have assigned for the Board of Education or for schools, which is basically purchase orders. A Board of Education is allowed, or the schools are allowed to carry over open purchase orders. If they have a purchase order and encumbrance open at the end of the year, they're allowed to carry that over into the next year. That's a generally accepted accounting principle. It's allowed by state law. Interestingly enough, the town charter prevents the town from actually doing that. So the town does not have assigned fund balance. We cannot carry purchase orders over into the next year. However, the council can assign fund balance for different purposes. And for 2025, the council, when they did the budget, assigned $800,000 of fund balance to the 25-26 budget. So that's built into the budget. So we subtract those from the total fund balance. The unassigned fund balance for the town was just shy of $27.5 million. Okay. So, again, there's a handout, the next page. This is also in your, this is not on the board. This is a handout. It's in the audit report that you'll see. Again, it's buried in the audit report, but this explains fund balance by the different funds that the town has, and just shows or highlights what it just shows what I just highlighted. Page 9. Yeah. So unassigned fund balance, again, was $27.5 million. Your 25-26 adopted budget was $136,765,000. So your fund balance percent, as a percent of the operating or adopted budget for 25-26 is 20%, 20.07% or 20.1%. That question came up at the last meeting. I said something otherwise, so I just wanted to clarify it and make sure everybody had it in writing from me. So your fund balance right now is at 20%. But let's go to the next page. And this is what I warned you about, or not necessarily warned you about. This is what the point I was trying to make at the last meeting. Fund balance is a fluid number, and fund balance could change, and the percentage could change. So again, taking your $27.5 million fund balance, in the forecast you'll see shortly, the projection is that next year you'd appropriate $400,000. The unassigned fund balance would then go to $27 million. Projected budget for next year, again, this is based on the forecast, would be $141.7 million. So your fund balance next year, with the appropriation, with the increase in the budget, your fund balance now drops to 19% of your budget. And I bring that up not to say don't take fund balance. I bring that up to tell you that it's a moving target, okay? It doesn't stay static. It's not always going to be 20%. It's not always, it could be over 20% at some point. It could be under 20% at some point. It's a numbers thing. And it really, it's a percentage thing. And I just wanted you to see that, that it does happen and it does occur. And someday you may be at, you may be at 19%, you may be at 18%, you may be at 25%. But again, it all depends on other factors also as to what that percentage is going to be. The other topic that's been brought up recently is outstanding debt, and we had a lot of questions at the last meeting last week about the town's outstanding debt. So I just have a little chart here that basically shows what our debt is as of July 1 of this coming year, July 1, 2026. It's not as of today, it's as of July 1 of 2026. So, and it includes everything that's been issued through today and everything that will be paid through June 30th of this year. So at July 1 of 2026, the town's going to have $26 million. Town debt is going to be $26 million. Interest is going to be almost $8 million, 7.9. So the total town debt will be just shy of $34 million. That's been issued for town projects. Open space, roads, the 1928 building, all fire trucks. That's where we're at with the town debt. School debt is going to be higher, obviously, because of the high school. $96 million in principal, $31 million in interest, $127 million total. And again, that's school projects. Sewer debt, the town back in the late teens, 2017 through 2019, the town issued, or we didn't actually issue, we borrowed through a loan program, a Clean Water Fund loan program. We borrowed close to $45 million for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. That $31 million in principal and $4 million in interest represents the 3 loans that we took out against the Clean Water Fund. We have a balance, or we'll have a balance of $35 million total on July 1. So the total debt overall, as of July 1 of 2026, will be $153 million for principal, $43 million for interest, $196.5 million total. That's where we're at. Go to the next slide. And this is where I apologize, and it's better in your handout than up there. But basically, what this shows is what's been authorized and issued, and it still has remaining balances. And I actually have to get my other glasses out for this. So it's a concession to old age here. Much better. So this is a list of all the projects that have currently unissued debt involved. These are all projects, referendums that authorize debt borrowings. It's the amount. So first column shows you the project and the amount that was authorized, the amount that's been bonded up to date, up through today, any grant paydowns that have occurred, and then what's the balance to be issued if it will be issued. So the authorized unissued column That's the balance that's available to be issued for different projects. So to give you an example, if you go down to the highlighted project, 1928 FHS building renovation, $16 million was authorized. We bonded $8 million in September of this year, of 2025. We had a grant of $7 million, which was the town's ARPA money. We have a balance, we have authorized unissued debt of $1 million. So currently on that project. If you look at some of the other projects, the police HVAC, the highway HVAC, the senior center HVAC, they're all authorized in recent referendums. Nothing's been issued, no grants have been received. So those have yet to be issued in full or in portion. The last column is potentially the next issuance the town will undertake. So you have a column there, 2026 issue highlighted, and it lists several projects. And it has a total at the bottom of $13 million. Those are the next projects up. They're the projects that are being, obviously the 1928 building's almost complete. The HVACs are being worked on. The police HVAC's being worked on. The two highway and the senior center are looking to go out to bid on those very shortly, I hope. And then, of course, the Farmington High School project is nearing completion. So right now what we're looking at is the potential in 2026, sometime after July, probably in the fall, of a $13 million bond issue. So that's the next big bond issue that would take place. Of these other projects that we're looking at here, more than likely, only one of them will actually be issued. Well, maybe two of them will be issued. The only one that really has a chance of being issued beyond 2026 is the Fire Engine 8 replacement. That, some of the council members may recall, we awarded a contract over a year ago. That contract put us in the queue to get our engine. Right now, the anticipation is we'll get it 3 years from now. So in 3 years or 4 years, that the town will have to bond that $692,000 to pay off the balance of that fire engine. But again, the $13 million is potentially the next bond issue the town may occur. If we go to the next page. Okay. Finally, I just wanted to remind the council where we are this year, what happened last year at this time with the budget. In 25-26, you adopted, for 25-26, you adopted a budget for the Board of Education with a 4.65% increase, for the town with a 4% increase. Our debt service went up $2.2 million or 20%. Capital improvements went up 32%. And there's a small increase. The overall increase to the expenditure side of the budget last year was 6.35%. On the next page, just briefly on the revenues, the non-tax revenues went up 14.5%. The big one being the grants, and that's highlighted in the middle, bolded in the middle there, the changes, $2.1 million. That was the ECS grant. So that there was where the big change was last year. The town the state fully funded the town's ECS obligation. So our grant jumped in 1 year to $2.1 million. Also to point out there, the fund balance appropriation, we did appropriate fund balance for 25-26, but it was $400,000 less than the 24-25 appropriation. And what does that mean? So at the bottom line at the end on page 15, the tax and mill rate. The mill rate went up 1.17 mils. It was 20 to 26.62 mils. It was a 4.61% increase. So basically going with the average home assessment was a $353 tax increase to the average home, which is assessed at $301,000. And again, after that, I just gave you the handout that shows you the first page of your budget document. So again, I'm using those as source documents. And not to get into what everybody's been waiting for, and that's the financial forecast. And thank you for that opportunity to present that information to you. So again, our adopted budget for 25-26 on this financial forecast, on this page 1, we have the adopted budget is the first column with numbers, then the second to the left, and the second column is the projected 26-27 budget. did this forecast a little differently this year. In the past, what we looked at in making these adjustments was looking at 20-year averages and adjusting for what known factors. For 26, 27, for education in the town, I did it a little differently. Basically, what I did here was I looked at the Board of Ed over the past 3 years. The Board of Ed over the past 3 years has averaged a 3.8% taxing, 3.8% budget increase. I know that the last 2 years have been in the fours, but actually it averages out to 3.8. The town actually would average out to a 3% tax increase. I don't know, maybe I was feeling tired or maybe a sense of fairness. I'm not sure what it was, but I gave the town a 3.8% budget increase also. So both the town and the board have 3.8 budget increases built in. The BOE pension contribution, that's just based on our forecast. The debt service number for 26, 27, that's your debt service number. And I'll say it now, and I'll probably say it in a month from now. That's all the debt that's been issued through this year, through the current period, and it builds in for a $13 million debt issuance next year at some point. So that number's pretty much the number you're going to see a month from now when you look at the budget, the $13.9 million. In the capital improvements, that's simply adding the education appropriation, the town appropriation, and multiplying it by 2.5%. That sticks with our policy that you adopted a couple of weeks ago. So that $3.1 million, it's slightly below 2.5%. 2.5 would be $3,105,000. I rounded it down to $3.1 million. So that's where so total bottom line expenditures or appropriations for next year, based on this forecast, would be $141,740,000. On the grand list side, these numbers, by the end of this week, I'll have better numbers here, but looked at the numbers, but basically historically, and also talking to the assessor, what we're looking at potentially for next year. And it was a mixed bag. We think the real estate will go up slightly, but I mentioned previously that one of the problems one of the good things and bad things about having good property tax results last year was that some of those tax appeals that did not get settled last year are getting settled next year. So some of those grand list increases that you may have seen, or some of those flat grand list values that you would have seen, may be lower because of tax settlements. Okay, and if you remember, a tax settlement is a property owner disputes their assessment. They go through the Board of Assessment Appeals. The Board of Assessment Appeals doesn't provide satisfaction. They have the right to sue. They sue. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't get to an actual court case, a lawsuit. It gets settled. Matter of fact, we had one 2 weeks ago. The assessor was going to court. He was ready to testify. The judge said, "Go in the room and settle." And I don't want this case. Go in the room and settle. And we had to settle the case. So what happens with that happens is you tend to split the difference. If they say their property is worth $20 million and you say it's worth $30 million, you're settling at $25 million. So basically, $5 million is coming off the grand list. And that's we project that may happen with this next upcoming grand list. There's going to be, like I mentioned, we had a settlement last week. We have a few more settlements that have occurred. The good news is we don't have any more tax appeals. We just settled our last one, but we may see some impact on that on the real estate growth. Be that as it may, we did forecast a 0.37 increase in the real estate. Personal property, we should have some good growth in personal property. There's been some good manufacturing, or not manufacturing, but some good commercial growth that should help us. And one of the things that surprised me in talking to the assessor was we've been seeing declines in motor vehicles because of changes in state statute in the way we can assess motor vehicles. He's actually feeling pretty confident that he's going to have a small increase in the grand list as opposed to a decrease. Last year we had a $27 million I think it was $27 million. last year we had a decrease in the grand list in motor vehicles. He's feeling that we actually may have an increase. So I built in a slightly below 1% increase into the motor vehicle grand list. Overall, it's pretty consistent with what we've seen in the past and what we forecasted previously. We're looking at potentially a $30 million increase in our grand list for next year. On the revenues for next year, some increases in other property taxes. Again, that's the supplemental motor vehicle. We did issue a supplemental motor vehicle tax levy this year, last month. We had some growth in it. It looked positive. We think that'll carry forward. Licenses and permits are going down, the forecast is. And big issue there, building permits. They say that the economy's not that great, and building permits are one of the first signs that the economy's not great, and our building permit numbers do look like they're slowing down considerably from where we've seen in the past. So forecasting a drop in building permit revenue for next year. Interest, and I'll have a better number for that, or better handle on that when we meet again on the budget, but there's no doubt it's going down, especially, after April of this year. I expect interest rates to drop dramatically if some people get their way. So I think, and the thing about interest rates dropping, the first place they drop is on your interest income. Second place they drop is on your credit card. So we're going to see a significant shift with that. We've also we also had some banks artificially hold rates high for us right now. Some banks that wanted to do business in town have come up with some very attractive rates, which they're not going to be able to hold forever. I have a bank that's holding a 3.6 when everybody else is holding a 2.4. And he's at some point going to come back and say, I can't do this any longer. And he rightfully so for them. But so we'll have a better handle in another month, but interest rates are definitely going down, which means that interest income will go down. Grants are holding flat at this point. We're at our ECS max, so we'll see what the next numbers come out. We also have to wait to see what audit adjustments come out on the special ed before we could get a good handle on that one. Service charges are flat, so is other Westwood's contribution. And then it built in a $400,000 fund balance, which I showed you in that chart previously. So overall, the non-tax revenues are forecasted to go down. They're going to be roughly to around $16.6 million. So what does that mean? If you go down to the bottom, tax and mill rate for next year, if everything on this forecast held true, you would have a 27.66 tax rate, which is a 1.04 mill increase, or a 3.9% tax increase. Again, it would be a little over $300 to the average home, $312 to the average home. The next column over 27, 28, I highlighted that and would like to point out that is a reval year. So I went back to the original idea of a 3.5% increase for Board of Ed, 3% for the town for that year. Debt service does jump that year. You're going to have a combination of the that $13 million issuance that we were talking about, and potentially another issue, but that would jump to 3.2 for the capital projects. Is again to 2.5%. And you look at that little shaded area on the grand list, that would be the impact. That's our forecasted impact to the grand list. Okay. Values in Farmington are still high. Things may be taking longer to sell, but values are still high in town. We expect the grand list, the real estate, to grow significantly, while everything else will grow basically the way it normally would grow. A small increase in motor vehicles, a good increase in personal property. So you're going to have over a $5 billion grand list if the forecast holds true based on reval. We do project some recovery on some of the other non-tax revenues. But the big thing to point out is that there's going to be a shift. There has to be a shift. And you have a very good grand list, and you have a very good setup with your grand list in most years. I mean, 25% of your grand list is commercial, industrial, and the other 75% is residential. And that's a very good, in every year except for a reval year, that's a very, very good mix. In a reval year, it's not so good because the shift becomes more pronounced. You're going to shift away from the commercial industrial, you're going to shift to the residential. So you potentially are going to see a shift to that year. Again, holding to the forecast, mill rate would go down to 25.7 mils, which is almost a 2 mil decrease, or 7%. However, the increase to the homeowner, the residential property, potentially could be 11.6%. That's basically because of their values. Now, one thing, we haven't actually started the reval yet. We've signed the contract. The company has not come in to start the reval, and they have not started looking at the numbers. So, what's happening now, what's happening in the next 6 months will be very telling. It could change these numbers significantly. Some people say that we are in a housing slump right now. I'm not sure it's going to translate to the values in Farmington, but it may. And so we'll see as time goes on, as we start getting numbers from the reval company to see what it looks like. But right now, our forecast is that this next reval will be very similar to the last reval, unfortunately. I'm not going to go through the rest of the years. You do have 10 years of information out there. I will tell you that you do have it in 28, 29. You're looking at an increase, again, another increase in your debt service. You're looking at a 3.5% potential tax increase. In the future years after that, however, it starts to go down, and that's as the debt drops off. You'll start to see tax increases in the 2.5% range until you get to 31, 32, which is another reval year. And you're not going to see, the forecast is you're not going to see as dramatic a change that year as you will see next year, or in 27, 28. You will see an actual decrease in people's property taxes that year. So if you look at the very last slide, can you just go to the very last slide? Future considerations. So just some things to think about as you go forward. As I just mentioned, you have revals and upcoming in the next two of them in the next 10 years. You do have modest growth in your grand list. Tax appeals are going to impact. Again, after the next reval, expect about 50 tax appeals. They will take about 3 years to settle out. So you're going to have those impacting your grand list for the next 3 years, 3 to 4 years. The other thing you should think about and maybe talk to your legislators about is the motor vehicle tax's future. There's a lot of talk at the state level of doing away with it, of making it very onerous. There's actually a law, which I haven't found, but I've been told that there's a law that says you could actually do away with the motor vehicle tax if you want to at the local level. I would not recommend that, but I haven't found the law, but there is supposedly a law out there that allows you to do away with it. The other thing, state grant direction. We have an election year coming up. I'm not sure what's going to be happening. The state's in very good shape. We may get, the state may decide to share some of their financial wealth with the towns. Your ECS grant is one of your bigger grants. It's probably the only grant that's really going to grow over the future. All the rest of the grants are pretty much going to stay static. And the other thing you have to think about is you have other large capital projects on the way, nothing to the magnitude of the high school, but you do have things like the ventilation systems at these schools, which will be coming forward. It was mentioned last week about this building and potential of doing a bond issue for this. As the schedule on the authorized unissued debt showed, we're out of road money, so we can't do any bonding. So we'll probably be coming to you. I'm not going to speak for Kathy, but it's more than likely we'll be coming to the council for another road bond authorization. That's coming down the pike. So, and then of course there's the firehouse renovation project that's been reported on and talked about. So, and then the last thing, will just remind you again, expenditure growth versus fund balance growth. You grow your expenditures, you don't grow your fund balance percentage goes down. It's just something to keep in the back of your mind that it's, again, that percentage, that 20% goal that you're striving for is very fluid. It's not always going to be there. It's nice to strive for it. It's nice to keep it, but it'll be a challenge going forward in the future.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. So I'm curious, are there any questions for discussion? Bruce?
Yeah, a couple of them. First of all, Joe, thank you for all this information. It's an incredible amount of stuff. I agree with you that we're likely entering a period of declining interest rates, and I would like to get an assessment of how handcuffed we are by that and what flexibility we might have, because we have a lot of different debt instruments. We're issuing another 13 million. That will be good because we'll get those at a lesser rate. Can we reissue any of the older ones? Is there a point where the costs of doing that become less than what our interest rate would bear? And do we have a sense of what interest rates would lead us to want to make some of those judgments?
There's several things. One is we in the past have done a lot of refinancing of our debt, and we did what we called all debt when it's issued. I'd say not all debt. The majority of debt that's issued has a callable date on it. So you pick a date, usually 7 to 10 years out, where you say, well, at that point the debt is callable. The town could decide we want to refinance the debt. We call all the debt in, we reissue new debt, pay off the old debt. There was a time we would actually be able to do what they called advance refunding, where we could issue debt and then invest that debt and put it in escrow, invest it, and then pay off the old debt. And basically, you could save money that way. I don't know what you call it. I don't know if it was the 2020 bill, it was the BBB, or was the BBB one. But anyway, the tax bill of, I think it was 2020 or 2019, did away with advance refunding. So we can't do any advance refundings any longer. We don't have any callable debt at this point in time because of all the previous debt that we've refinanced. Our next callable debt would probably be towards the end of the decade, probably 27, 28, 29 in that time period. That being said, there's probably probably by that time, debt will, again, forecasting, prognosticating, whatever, maybe at that time, debt will be, the interest rates will be at the point where it'd be worthwhile doing. You want a 2% difference. If you have 5% debt, you don't want to refinance it at 4%. You want to refinance it at 3 or lower. So most of our debt is already at 3 or lower. Even our debt on the high school with the high interest rates, we were talking about our highest issue, I think, was 3.47%. So we'd really have to rates would really have to drop to levels that we haven't seen since pre-COVID before we would be able to refinance it'd be worthwhile refinancing anything. In terms of the first part of your question, we're very restricted as to what we can invest in. So we cannot invest town money other than pension money. Again, excluding pension money, we cannot invest in stocks. Or any type of equity instruments. We could invest in money markets. We can invest in CDs, treasuries. We can invest in other towns' debt if we wanted to do that. So we're pretty much tied to what we can invest in, commercial paper to some extent. The volume that we do makes some of that not worth doing. What the state does offer us is they have an investment pool called STIF, Short-Term Investment Fund, and they do all that. And their fund is in the billions of dollars, and they allow us to join into that and buy shares in that fund. So that's one of the things that really, they're like, we design our portfolio so that they're the backbone of our portfolio. We have a good portion of our money in that investment fund, and then we also distribute it out amongst various banks. And we do have limitations as to what banks we will use and how much we will put in a bank, and that's just basically for liquidity and safety purposes.
Are we extending our durations a little bit because as interest rates dropping, are we going a little longer?
Again, we don't. We basically will do pools, or we'll do the most we'll do in terms of I don't want to say illiquid, but most we'll do in terms of tying up our money are CDs. And actually, right now, what we're seeing with CD offerings is the shorter the term, the better, the higher the interest rate. We just renewed a CD, $2 million, to go. Nobody would go beyond 6 months, and 6 months was under 3. I'm sorry, yeah, I'm getting this wrong. 8 months was under 3, and no more than further than 8 months. 8 months was under 3. 6 months was over 3. 4 months was over 4. So the banks are hedging their bets based on what's going to happen with the Federal Reserve and what's going to happen with interest rates, and they don't want it to go out long term if they don't have to also. So right now, and the other part is we have to stay liquid. At the end of the year, if everything works out well, at the end of the year, we should only have $27 million left in the bank. We should have our fund balance left, and everything else should be spent. Fortunately, it's not what happens. It's usually higher than that, but that's usually what you're looking at is basically the money we take in now, we're going to spend now.
Okay. And one last quick one before I let somebody else ask some things. The defined benefit pension contribution, where does that line item appear?
It would be buried under town, under the town number. We don't.
The town
break that
it's
out.
in there. Okay.
It's in that number. And I can tell you that we do have preliminary valuation from the July 1, 25 valuation, and it was very good. And it's very good news. So we'll talk about it more once it's finalized, but it's I think you should be pleased with the results. Both you and Dave should be pleased with the results.
All right. Well, thank you.
Nadine, would you like to, any questions?
I don't have questions.
So, Joe, questions on page 12, which is the bonded debt. Yeah, and then that's the authorized and the unissued debt. So the 13 million, and obviously you roll up those numbers on the highway garage, police facility, senior, new Farmington High School, 1928 building renovation. Are you issuing that before July 1st, or are you issuing that after July 1st?
No, the goal would be to, that's actually a good question. The goal would be to issue that as far into 2026 as possible. One of the things, and it's not a trick, but it's a trick. If I issued it before June 30th, you would have a principal payment next year.
That's what
So
I
if
thought.
I-
So I was curious.
Yeah, if I issue it after June 30th, you would only have an interest payment next year. And the principal payment would come on the following year. That's why you see the jump in the forecast.
Right.
If you see there's 27, 26, you see the 27, 28, you see that
bumps.
jump, that bump up.
Yep.
That's the principal kicking in for the $13 million issue.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. And then here, obviously, you alluded to it. There's no road money left right now, correct?
Right, we
Is
issued,
there a plan for road money coming up this coming year?
well, again, I can't speak for Kathy, but my recommendation to her would be that
So there is going to be something in the. Okay, so I just want to put it kind of like a question, like an asterisk there. Okay, got it. Okay, and then on the 5.6 for the new Farmington High School, because now all of that gets bonded, right? The 5.6 goes right to the amount bonded, so the 101 would go up to 106,693, right? 653.
right.
Okay, and then there's obviously some money that hasn't been bonded yet. There'll be some residual money that hasn't been bonded yet, and I know there's some things in the strategic plan and so forth, but are we, when we get the grants pay down number, which is 30,087,000, is that a hard number, or is that calculated on any formula that would change here?
The 30,087,000 is actual.
Is actual.
That's actually what we have received from the state of Connecticut
Got it.
based on reimbursement submissions that we've made to them.
Okay.
There may be more coming from the state. I think we're pretty much at the
We're
end.
almost at max.
Yeah,
We're almost at max.
yeah. So, and the other part of that you have to remember is they're withholding 2%.
Yeah, for the whole
It's higher.
closeout, right?
Sorry,
I think it's higher than 2.
they're withholding, and every reimbursement we send to them, they withhold. I think it's 2%, maybe higher, and they won't release that to us until they do their audit. And experience has shown that audits could take forever. There was, and I apologize if I gave this example before, but on one of our school projects, we got the reimbursement, I think it was 12 years later.
Westwood.
Yeah.
It was Westwood, right?
Yeah.
It was like 12, 15 years afterward.
Yeah. So, we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
My guess is that you're probably not done, even with the 5.6, you're probably not done issuing debt on the high school. You'll probably have one more cleanup issue at some point along the way.
And for accounting purposes, not that you would know this, but is the 5.6 bring us through, like, are there contractor expenses beyond beyond the 5.6? Kind of what you're saying, I think, right?
Yeah, and basically what we've been paying all along. As I mentioned last week, the debt we issued in September for the high school was to basically make the town whole through September, what was paid on the high school through September. Since September, we've continued every month to make payments.
Yeah.
I just approved the payment of, I think it's $181,000.
On the last requisition or something?
So, yeah, the very last requisition. So there's other requisitions coming in, and that's what that 5.6 represents.
I sent you more today, too.
And then, no, you've answered my questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Okay.
Thank you, Joe. This was very informative. Dave asked most of my questions, but I do have, looking at the out years in the projection, and I know we've talked about this before in terms of keeping the debt service kind of, flat instead of spiking. And obviously the high school project is a big project.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you? I apologize for
Yep.
interrupting you, and I just, maybe I can anticipate your question, or maybe I could address a comment that was made previously today. And if you go back to that forecast, of course, which I'm not going to find. On page 18, if you look at the 25-26 adopted budget, go to the very bottom line, debt to budget. Okay, you see the 10%, you see the 9.9%, you see the 10.5%? That's debt service to budget.
Okay.
So the policy that you approved last week, we're not going to stay entirely with it. We do have some 10.5s in there in future years, 27, 28, 28, 29. There are some years where we're at 10.5%. But overall, we're hovering around that 10% range. We have 2 years at 10.5, a year at 10.1, and then we're dropping back down to the 9s again. So we're staying within the range of the policy.
And generally, this is what's expected from a good accounting practice and what, I guess, in terms of going back to, we always talk about the Moody's rating and how we budget and making sure our debt service stays kind of constant as opposed to creating peaks and valleys over time.
Right. The whole goal is to be consistent. The whole goal is to stay within your policies as much as possible, and more importantly, be consistent with whatever you do. With your tax increases, with your debt issuance, with your debt to budget ratio. It's to be as consistent as possible. And one of the ideas, or one of the strategies that we use in issuing debt is to issue debt when it's needed, not when it's available to be issued. So, for example, some of those projects on that authorized unissued, they were approved 1 or 2 years ago. We still have not issued the debt on them, and we won't until they're actually needed to be to be issued. When the bills come due, then we'll start issuing the debt on those. But we'll also slot it in, and we'll try to amortize it to our advantage in terms of what's dropping off. So as old debt drops off, we'll slot in new debt so that we stay at a consistent level of debt service. We stay at a consistent level of ratio.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions tonight. I just, it was very, very informative, Joe, and I thank you for it. I just want to make sure I'm going to want to take some time to digest this, and then during the budget process, we'll have an opportunity to come up for some follow-ups. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Just a quick housekeeping question again on the fund balance. So you had said I just want to make sure I understand your point where you said the difficulty in years coming with fund balance is basically that as our average spend increases and the fund balance remains the same, that fund balance goes from the robust 20% that Moody's likes, and it's just going to go lower and lower and lower. Because I see in your forecasts, for next year, I assume because it's the reval year, we're going back up to 800,000 is the projection. Because the idea initially was to sort of taper off, which is why we were at that 1.28. Now we're at 4, but then with the reval year, we're projecting it. And then after that, it comes off the table again, but there's no giving back. And that's where the rubber meets the road, sort of.
Yeah, the idea with, for many years, we didn't tap fund balance. We stopped we stopped putting it in the budget, so we allowed it to build up. And one of the strategies was to handle, it wasn't the initial strategy, but it was, the initial strategy was to build up fund balance to get it to a 15% range. And once we exceeded the 15%, and once we knew the high school was coming on board, the idea was to build it up as much as possible so that we could help defray some of the tax increases as we took on the debt for the high school. That's why we went up to the $1.2 million. And the idea was to wean ourselves away from it over time. And that's why we went down to the 800,000 and then the 400,000. But and this is where sometimes your plans don't always go the way you want them to go, is the revals come in when you don't. We didn't expect a reval in 4 years. The state changed the law or changed the regulations. We have to do a reval in 4 years. Would there have been a big difference in 5 years? No, potentially there could have been, and maybe we didn't tap fund balance again, in 27, 28. Maybe we tapped it in 28, 29, or something like that for the reval to help defray the reval. The thing about, and it's to try to warn you or to recommend to you, is don't use fund balance as a crutch. It's there for an emergency, and you could define an emergency, or it's there to help you in extraordinary times. Not when you're falling apart, but necessarily when you're falling apart, but when you're going to expect a large tax increase due to something like a high school project or something like a reval coming on board. The idea is, I've been in towns where every year they'd say, how much of fund balance could we take? And it's like, well, what's it for? We're going up 3% in taxes. Well, we don't want to go 3%. We want to go 2%. So we want $1 million of fund balance. You're never letting your fund balance grow. I mean, I was in a town where literally 1 year our fund balance was a negative. I mean, if we potentially had a negative fund, we didn't have a fund balance because every year they were appropriating fund balance.
And we were a little bit like that for quite some time.
Yeah.
That's why we have a policy and we started to grow the fund balance because it was quite low.
And I guess we're around that. So when you say when we've grown the fund balance in the past, that was because we budgeted to add money to it, or we just left it in that state, the STIF fund, or how are we growing it for?
Basically, you grow fund balance by your result of operations each year.
Okay, so just the surplus.
So basically, it's your surplus each year. And you do that by, one, conservatively budgeting. I know people don't like when we say sometimes that we conservatively budget, but we take into account a lot of things in our budget in preparing our budget that, and to be fair, a lot of towns don't take into consideration. We estimate how much, or we try to estimate how much we're going to have in assessment appeals, or how much we're going to have in assessor adjustments each year. And we factor that into our tax rate calculation. Most towns don't do that. But we had 1 year where our tax levy was lower than our budgeted tax amount. which means that we couldn't collect as much money as we had put in the budget that we were going to collect from taxes. So we try to factor those things in. We try to be conservative with the grants. One of the things we do with, for example, the ECS grant is the offset for special education adjustments. When they do the special ed audit and if they have findings and they find they overpaid the town, they don't take it back from special ed, they take it back from ECS. So that the state could say, well, we're going to give you $2 million in ECS money next year, but if there's an audit adjustment, it comes off the ECS grant. So we try to figure out what's the adjustment going to be and budget to the adjustment. So there's some conservative, I don't want to say they're tricks, but practices that we have that we use to try to be more conservative in our budget, more accurate in our budget.
And the state has become much more, over the last 5 to 8 years, much more consistent in the grant funding. And so we've become less conservative in the grant funding because of the fact that we've been getting the money that they say that we're actually going to get. But back in the day, they'd say we get $6 million and we get $4 million. And then our budget would be short $2 million. So we wouldn't budget some of the grants. But we've come around because consistently now you get the grants.
Yeah,
So we last year was just a weird year, which was great. We got the extra $2 million, which really helped us out, which helped out our fund balance.
I have one more easy one just for the sake of our next two agenda items. Just on that, your projected $13 million debt, just to touch on the base, that includes everything you're seeing in the strategic plan. When you talk about between school projects or I see you have stuff for senior center, all of these things that are, I know that they're listed here, but they're things that we have as highlighted as potential things for the next 2 years.
I'm not really sure. I don't
have to hold it. I mean,
yeah. This includes, that $13 million includes projects that have already been authorized by the voters through referendums, that still have money available to them. I tell you, it does not include the firehouse renovation project. It does not include ventilation systems for the schools. It does not include another issue for the roads. It does not include $5.5 million for this building. Okay, it may include, I'm not sure if it does, but it may include a track replacement and an artificial turf field replacement. It may include that in there, So
yeah, I guess I misspoke too. I know that given that the ad hoc with some of the firehouse, those are bigger things. I guess I meant sort of the. I guess it is things like.
It's already what we have.
Yeah, what we have.
I have a real quick question.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm done.
Joe, you mentioned the HVAC stuff, and we know the state of Connecticut has certainly changed the process by which we'll be reimbursed. But it's my understanding that the town, I think, has to front the money before the whole. So in other words, when we're talking about putting those things into the elementary schools, I think we have to be mindful of the fact that we're going to be out similar to the high school project, right? We're going to be fronting a lot of money, and then we'll be reimbursed kind of like with the roofing projects and things like that, right?
Right.
So that's why that's important for us to be mindful of in terms of that debt service as we go forward, right?
Exactly, and that's when you look at that unauthorized unissued column. See a lot of those school products that still have small balances left in them. That's the net after the town's money and the grant money. Because when we do authorize by law, we have to authorize the full cost of the project, but we only issue the town's portion of the project. So a lot of those small dollar amounts you see there, those will never be issued. It's very unlikely that those will actually be issued. The projects are complete. In most cases, we're still waiting for the state reimbursement to come in. Once that comes in, those projects will close out.
The reimbursements will be good, I think. It's certainly very favorable to where we were maybe 4 or 5 years ago when we were having these conversations. Yeah. But certainly something the town needs to be mindful of in terms of laying out.
Yeah. The last thought I'd leave you with, and I know I've spoken a lot, is we did do a forecast on $50 million worth of projects going forward. It's just a very rough forecast. And if you look at the 10-year forecast you have here, basically I would tell you, bottom line, you'd probably have to add $500,000 to each year of this forecast. And that would get you your $50 million over the next 10 years.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Are there any other questions?
Sorry, Joe. I want to go back to the defined benefit pension plan. As I look at this, I think we should spike it out because two reasons. One, we do it for the Board of Ed pensions, and secondly, to burden the town manager with this line item that's slowly growing over time. It's really unfair. It's a non-discretionary item. So I think for consistency reasons, we should spike it out.
Yeah,
Yay,
I'm sure the
Bruce,
town
yay.
manager would do that. I just would warn you that over time, that probably would not be a fair thing for everybody because there's only two pension plans still open. So the growth and the liability is going to be coming from those two pension plans, and those are both town pension plans, the police and the fire. So when you start to see increases in the future, they're primarily going to be because of the police and the fire. And actually, I'm not sure if it's this one, but there was actually an instance, it may have been last year, where the Board of Ed's contribution actually went down. And their contribution will probably go down in the future. So being in
still
Kathy's
could.
budget and having that portion of it go down offsets the increase on the ones going up. So she may not want to always, take that out of there.
Okay.
We'll do it on an every other year basis.
When it's beneficial to me.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, all set? All right, Joe, thank you very much. There's a lot of great information here and a lot of good questions out of that. So we look forward to working with you over the next couple of months. See you again. All right, why don't we move on to item D2?
Do you want to make the motion first? Do you want to discuss it first? I can make the motion. I move to adopt the 2026-2028 Town of Farmington Strategic Plan Town Manager Goals.
Second.
So you have the plan in front of you from our last meeting. I think we tried to capture most of what everyone had said, and we put the goals in. I did a couple of new, if it was brand new, I put new next to it, and I put like a priority one because that's kind of what I felt like at the discussion, but I'm not sure, but that's what I felt that the conversation was. I did a couple of priority twos, which were kind of later on in the discussion, but just to have it on the plan so that we can talk about it. And I don't know if I missed anything or if there was anything else, but I think we talked about this quite a bit at length at the last meeting, and so I'm not sure where we're at.
Yep. Nadine, do you have any questions on?
I just on 2.3. Just it looks like it's a duplicate.
Yeah, you told me that we're going to get rid of that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Dave, you got anything?
I think it captured
More conversation.
Not right now, no.
Okay. Pat, you got anything?
No, this is, I think it fits with what we discussed last time.
Agreed.
You good?
Good deal.
Yep.
Good?
Just will tell everyone this is aggressive. There's a lot of goals here, but I think that we'll start chipping away at it. But I think that's it's fine to be aggressive. But there are quite a bit of goals on there, so just want that to be noted for the record. Not really, just kidding. And if you would indulge us, Kat, people have been commenting a little bit. We know that this needs a little bit of a refresh, this strategic plan. So I had Amanda and Kat kind of look at it and try to set it up more as a document. We hadn't talked about it at the last meeting, but we just threw something together. They did, but this is kind of our branding, and so we'd have it'd be more like a booklet, and so it'd be 26-28 strategic plan. And then Kat, we'd have like a table of contents where you'd have the letter to the citizens, the different things. Mm-hmm. So you'd have what we typically have, and Brian will do that. Then we'd have our vision statement, and we'd have it like more the council at the bottom. And then our town profile, kind of like some information about that. And then how is this plan and how do I use it? Kind of like some different things, strategic priorities, education, land, economic development, budget, best practices. Having it, go that way. We as you know, we insert just the board stuff. We don't do that. We just insert the board. So we put that in. And then transportation and land, like up on the top, we'd put what the goal is. We'd have our desired outcomes and then our goals like going down that way. And so like kind of like a refresher. You know, again, we didn't talk about it, I don't know, but instead of having it in an Excel document, it's easy for us to change. We think it looks more like a document. You know,
Nice and clean.
it's clean.
It's the kind of thing, if I was a realtor, I'd want that.
Yeah.
You
You
know what I
know, and again, recreation, it says what each one of the goals are, and it's more like what our annual report looks like, what all our branding looks like, and then we just have the desired outcomes, and then our individual goals on the end of each page. So that would be on the web, and then people could read it, and we'd have it look like something's more similar to this. It's the content's still the same; it just looks nicer.
I love it.
I think it's more user friendly.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. Really
Yeah.
great job.
Oh, Amanda did all of the
Great job.
legwork on it, but
Yeah,
Really good.
yeah,
so something
it-
like
it
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So real quick
Yeah.
on that, for the education one,
Yeah,
I know you just said that you just lift and insert.
yeah.
Will it be formatted? Okay, so
we have to
formatted-
work with them, I think, because they have a lot of.
Yeah.
This is one big chart, but we can work to see what fits best.
Yeah.
just
in
so
the
it looks
design.
consistent.
And it looks consistent. Yeah.
That looks great.
Yeah. So does that work
Yeah,
for
that
something
works.
like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
That looks awesome. Thank you.
Good. All right.
Thank you for doing that, Kat.
All right, so do you want to do a motion for,
Patty did one.
I already did it.
second it.
All in favor?
yeah, same? Any other discussion? All in favor?
I
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. Move on to item D3. General discussion on the fiscal year 26-27 budget and potential action on setting budget targets.
So you have the typical information that I try to give every year. We do a tax rate history, a 5-year expenditure average, adopted budget, general fund CIP allocation, and expenditures versus tax rate history. As you can see, like we can have higher expenditures versus what our tax rate is because our grand list is strong. Again, we've talked about budget targets or ranges in the past. Council sometimes, usually they set expenditure targets for the school and for myself. As you know, not all the information is available, even though Joe did a great job of kind of forecasting some of the different things for us. But we haven't gotten our grand list yet. We haven't had the state aid. I do look at some different things. You know, first I look to fund accounts at levels that will enable service levels to remain at high standards. So that's usually where we start with, trying to keep services the same. Then we kind of look at the entire budget, which we're going through now, to look for different cost saving measures, to see where we can save money, some different ways we do things. And then we look at potential drivers, just to talk about that with the council. So again, we looked at the cost of living, and it says at 2.7 as December 2025. And then although the CIP is 2.7, we do, and I think when we've spoken to the school side too, we are definitely experiencing much higher cost across goods, services, and operations. All our contracts are coming in much, much higher than 2.7%. Our goods are expensive. Everything is expensive. So we are seeing that all over the place. We are going to be opening up the new town hall. So we're going to be running 2 buildings this year. And we're also going to have our recreation restrooms facility. Last year for the 1928 building, we only budgeted 4 months worth of building maintenance and operation. So this year we're going to be doing 12 months. So that's definitely going to be a driver. As Joe mentioned, we budgeted $800,000 for fund balance as a revenue item. So that should be considered that, you know, if we're going to have a whole of that $800,000. And lastly, our contracts are settling all at the 3% range, and then with steps, so the cost of the contracts are exceeding 3%, and our budget, a good portion, 70 or 80% of our budget is personnel cost on the town side. So you're seeing those numbers up higher too. And again, you know, I think that there is definitely a push. You know, we'll make do, but I am seeing on both the highway and the public safety side of people needing people. I think that's our biggest driver right now, is people want more people in the operation to get things done. How much we'll be able to do is, you know, will be up, but Public Works is down people, and just like with the snowstorms like this and things of that nature. Police will tell you when they come in, when the chief comes in 2 weeks, and I'm sure Russ Arnold is going to tell you too, is that, our policing levels are the same as what we had 25 years ago. And so we have not increased any type of police, in 20, like maybe we have like one more person, a traffic review officer and a school officer. But we also back, in the recession in 2006, 2008, we eliminated a couple of positions of the police. So we are about the same with all the different population. So again, we are having, it's tough. People are the biggest thing that, to keep the service level. So that's pretty much where I am on the town side right now. We're working through the budget. You're going to see the capital at the end of February, and we're working on the capital, and there's needs on the capital side too. There's definitely needs on the capital side if we want to renovate this building, which I think people are very anxious and would like to see that happen, and have this be like the with the Hope group and the food pantry group and the social service group in here. I think that's a good. We need heating and the air conditioning systems. So there's that. The roads. We've spoken with the school system on the HVAC and that we're actually pretty pleasantly surprised on the numbers that have come through with that. And also the grant funding's different now, which is running through like how you do roofs and stuff, which is a lot more funding than what we expected. So that's positive. So there's a lot of needs. There's a lot of needs for sure.
And we do a lot of good things. So for this discussion, Keith, would you like to get us started?
Sure. I gave myself a couple notes so I don't meander too much, but I was going to speak to the idea of a target. And then I know we had some public comment about the idea of even having a target. I think our goal, obviously, is to continue to maintain the services we've historically provided. We don't want to backslide or start, giving people less. I know there was a couple times in previous budgets where we had to cut out some services on the trails and things like that. You will start to notice that over time if we're not able to keep up with what we've been doing. Ideally, I think we'd all prefer no spending increase at all. But with inflation and things like that, we understand why it's necessary. I strongly support us continuing to set budget targets. We've done this successfully for years, and it's been quite a good tool for keeping taxes low by preserving services. I think it's also a valuable tool for staff. Departments identify their true needs and greatest priorities. Then they make tough internal cuts to their budgets rather than sending us open-ended requests where we decide potential cuts. They're the experts in their department. I think they should be the ones setting their needs, prioritizing them, I should say. In addition, I'd refute the idea that a target could constrain a given department's requests. A target doesn't prevent a department from requesting what they truly need if it is over what we've targeted. And we have a good example of that in recent history. 2 years ago, the town council set a budget target for town and school sides at 3%, and the Board of Education came in just over 6%. They then advocated effectively for their needs, and we ultimately approved a higher amount than town council had targeted. Everyone worked in good faith to get towards a reasonable outcome on the board and town council side. My personal thoughts on target, my personal number, historically, it was always drilled into my head when I first came on the council that one of the things that we were telling neighbors, particularly when we were looking out for the school, was that we were going to try to really keep expenses, to about a 3% increase on a year-over-year basis. That's what's been drilled in my head. The last 2 years, we certainly were over that. We were at 5.1 and 4.6, somewhat expectantly due to the funding of the new high school. I recall from conversations last cycle, and I think Kathy alluded to it too, 3% or under 3% is super tough in this day and age with where stuff is. CPI, I think in Joe's information was 2.7. Is that right, Joe? Something like that, 2.7 CPI. Is that in your packet? Information?
It's in her.
Kathy's. Oh, your information. Sorry. Yeah. And then collective bargaining agreements and things like that. I would still advocate for coming in lower than necessary. for the exercise of trying to control costs. I think if you set, given that the last 2 years we have set targets at 3, and we've been 1.5% to 2% over that, I think if you come in, at 4 with some of these other things, then I think we could kind of get ourselves into more trouble. We have another reval year coming next year. It's going to be a tough tax year. We've raised taxes the last couple of years, pretty extensively. And I understand that there's been a lot of needs in that, and I've been a part of that process. So I'm not casting aspersions. I would set a target of around 2.9. If we were doing a range, I would say 2.9 to 3.3, somewhere like that. Again, I know I'm likely the lowest here. I'm also happy to have the conversation, and I've been flexible in the past, and I'll continue to be flexible.
Thank you, Bill.
That was really well said, Keith. I agree with a lot of what you say with respect to the idea of setting a target, and I understand the rationale and the logic behind it. Where I depart, though, is in the picking of a number, because we can make educated guesses as to what we think would be an appropriate target. I also share a commitment to the concept and the commitment that was made. And I've said this before in other meetings, in other forum, about the 3% is something that we went to the town with, as kind of like we were all, as you say, in good faith, trying to kind of honor that. And being mindful of the debt that we were incurring with respect to the high school project. But I also share some of the sentiment that was expressed in public comment tonight about asking and letting the professionals kind of come to us with what they think they need to run their departments. And this is kind of where my mind has always been, certainly for the last 20 years of serving the community, is that when we set the target, it's an exercise by the council of saying, we're not exactly sure what it costs to run the town as the elected officials, that we do understand that the professionals that run our community, we had a phenomenal presentation by our finance director tonight. I mean, our town manager has done a phenomenal job in bringing us all up to speed, a relatively new council in 3 weeks. We've got excellent professionals throughout town hall and across the community that do work for us in public works and the police department and fire and public safety. My feeling is that I kind of want to hear from those folks. I want to hear, okay, this is what we need to make sure we're able to commit to providing the services, Kathy, you kind of referenced in your remarks with respect to the changing needs of our community, the expectations of publics, of the services that people are looking to our community to provide. We don't live in the town that I moved in 20 years ago when we could do those things and be comfortable with those numbers in the 2s and the 3s, because there wasn't the demand for service. Our community has changed, and the expectations of our society have changed, and pressures on charitable organizations have changed. And I think as the financial body of town, what I really want to do is I go into this, my first opportunity to really consider the budget from this level as opposed to from the school board side, is to really understand what our professionals think they need. And then, as was referenced in our public comment, we as the elected officials have to do the homework and be prepared to ask, pointed questions and understand why something is being asked for. And then we have to make value judgments as to what extent we're willing to, follow through or not, right? That being said, I don't think it's fair, especially, given some of the comments you made, Keith, as well, to just kind of let them fly blind. I don't think it's fair to just simply say, well, then come up with a number and, because that's not how it's been done in the past. And I think we have to respect that process as well. I'm not too keen on a specific number. I would probably have a greater range, only to the extent that, we are starting at the consumer price index at 2.7%. I would say the low range should be 2.75% in my mind. And then, as you also mentioned, Keith, we were probably closer in the 4s recently in the last couple of years, again, as a reflection of the fact that inflation impacts. Listen, we have to be mindful of the fact inflation is going to affect everybody at this table, our friends, our neighbors, our seniors who are on fixed incomes. We have to be mindful of all of that, but it also affects the ability to provide government services. The cost of everything is going up, and thankfully not at a breakneck pace, but it is rising, and we need to be mindful of that. So my position would be is if we were to set a range of between 2.75 and 4.75, I'd be comfortable with that. And then seeing where that takes us. Approaching it in good faith, looking for opportunities to save wherever we can, certainly. Or to defer things if we need to, as we saw tonight. We've got a lot of debt service we have to be mindful of. So there's things we may have to kind of pick and choose what our priorities are. But that's kind of where I land on it, and so I look forward to going into this process with my colleagues from this perspective for the first time.
So I will try not to reiterate what Bill's already said. I have not voted in favor of a target in prior years, in part because I do believe that we should be relying on our professional staff to identify what is needed, what isn't. Keith, I fully understand that everyone's come back with higher numbers before. I think one of my concerns is, and Kathy, you mentioned this is a very ambitious strategic plan, and I think by setting a target that it becomes challenging to know necessarily what is the cost of this strategic plan that we've proposed. And I think just because a range might be higher than has been done in the past does not imply that that's the budget that the town council is going to approve. But I think as elected officials, we should be the ones we are the ones that the town has chosen to be responsible for, at the end of the day, the budget. We all hear it at the doors, our taxes went up. And I think it's on us to be making some of the hard calls about what we should and should not be spending money on. How do we direct the future? How do we accomplish what we've identified in this strategic plan? And frankly, I don't really know what the cost is of accomplishing what we've laid out in the strategic plan. And I appreciate that we are going to have to take some of these action items in steps, and we can't do it all at once because we won't have the staff or the funds. But I do think we owe it to ourselves and the community to know what is the cost of this strategic plan and what we would need. So, but with that in mind, and I would be happy to provide guidance that I would be comfortable with a range of 2.75 to 4.75. But if, from my perspective, it's a guidance, and I would hope that we could act more on consensus tonight than having to vote on a concrete number.
Dave?
Yeah, I think, kind of where Keith, Patty, and Bill have landed, obviously, and where kind of Patty left off, I would say, the strategic plan is kind of that important document that we've identified now some priorities. And I think if we want to live into that strategic plan and we want to make sure that we see what the ability to accomplish what we put forward, I think a range is kind of a good strategy to be able to, live with and kind of give that as a responsibility to the town side to be able to see with Kathy and her staff, what kind of decision making needs to take place for some of that to take place. I'd also say not only the priorities of the strategic plan, but I think, we had a resident come here today who talked about, he talked about like cell service, in that part of town, the west side of town. And I think, sidewalks, I think there are priorities in a balance that I think we have to, kind of forge ahead and try to make possible. And I think that also blends into this whole conversation of what ultimately the budget number is going to be. And I think historically speaking, we have a lot of the history from all the years past. We have the forecast that Joe has put together for the out years, and I think we can come to a range. I think we can put a range out there that I think is a comfortable enough range where there's these decisions that are going to be made to build into it, and then we have an opportunity to review it. I think Bill is actually, spot on. It's our job to do the homework. It's our job to really understand what these expenditures at the end of the day are going to achieve for the town and its residents, and then make some final decisions on whether whether that's all in at one time or some of it's got to be phased in, and then we pare it down from there. But I would definitely be in favor of the range.
Okay, thank you. Nadine?
So I'll just echo, I think there's many pieces that everybody has said I agree with 100%. I feel comfortable just looking back at the averages without reval and then with reval. I am concerned that going into reval and then increasing taxes is going to be a challenge. I'm in favor of a range as well, but sticking in the 3s to not all the way up to a 4 in my opinion, but giving guardrails. I do agree they are professionals. They know their work and what they need. And to have those conversations as a committee to say, what are we going to give and take? But I feel comfortable with the range.
Thank you.
I'm in somewhat of a unique position here because unlike all the rest of you, I have not gone through a municipal budgeting cycle either for town or for Board of Ed. But I have lots of experience in the corporate environment doing this. And I think I'm in agreement with almost all the comments that have been made here. And at the end of the day, we have to do the work for the budget to get to where we want to go. And people will behave in the way that you message them and the way that you tell them. So I am comfortable with doing the range idea, but I don't want the range to be so tight or so constrained that people start self-limiting a little too much, because I think they will do that. So I would like to see the range go a little bit higher, not too high, obviously, because we don't want people to, shoot the moon. I want to see them come back with a reasonable range to work in. And then at the end of the day, it almost doesn't matter because we'll do the work. We're going to go through the line items and be able to do that. But I don't want people to throw out anything that we might want to look at, because part of what governing is all about is balancing the allocation of scarce resources. And it's incumbent on us to get that right. So I'm absolutely committed to do the work with all the rest of you to get to where we want to go. So bottom line, I will support a range.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Sorry, the only thing I would say, just because Bruce just mentioned it about not wanting to constrain people, we have to remember the opposite is true too. Is you have the range of 2.7 to 4.75. You may, given that we have had tighter guardrails, but we might see, whatever the analogy is, letting their hair down a little bit and just making sure that they're getting it, which is fine if that's what it's the direction that's on the dais are looking to do. I get that. We also talked about inflation too. We just have to remember taxes are inflation. So when we're raising taxes above CPI level, like we are now contributors to inflation. And then the last thing I would say is, because we did have a resident come here and talk about all the projects that they wanted, we also had one last week that said that they moved into town. They live on Westview Terrace. They moved into town 8 years ago and have had their taxes soar up since they moved down. And they specifically picked this area moving from Long Island because we were so because of milk, which we get a lot of that. Everybody hears about a lot of that. So I get where everybody's coming from. Like I said, I've been flexible, team player, a 2% range. I know that if I got that, there's not a shot that I'm coming in under 4%. It's just not a shot. I'm going to make sure I'm up there, no matter what. If that's what people need and that's where we want to go, it's the discussion. I get it. Just throw my 2 cents in.
Well, typically you ask me what you think I can come in at to maintain the service level. So that's
I would like to. I was going to ask you that.
But typically you say that. But if you remember last year that we said, and I try to come in on whatever the target is and keeping the service level. But if you remember last year, I did say that we could probably come in at 3%, and we were going to lay off people at doing that, to come in at 3%. And I will tell you now, with opening a brand new building and having that, there is not a chance that I'm coming in at 3% and to keep the service levels the way they are. I mean, we've gone through the budget enough to do that. We are definitely, we were 4% last year. If, 70% of our budget is close to 4%, you're going to be up at that level. And that's with no new people, no new services. And that's basically keeping things around that. Like, I'll aim as close as I can to get us under that. And then, again, I think it's worked well, and I'm open to whatever everyone wants, but I will try to have a list of things that people have talked about. And I tell you what it's going to be is people. That's what people are going to want. They're going to want people. And so, and at that level, you're probably not going to get people. So that will be something that when you come in and say, listen, when you hear from the police department and you hear what all their different things that they want to do and the different things that go on, and the same thing with the public works department and different things like that, you'll hear about that. But I don't think, I'll try my best, obviously, to do it, but we're going through it. I see where, we're at, and I have a pretty good handle on what it takes to keep the service level the same.
So 4% is the maintained budget.
I think so, yeah. I think we're opening up a whole brand new building. So we have a whole new brand building, and we're running this building at the same time. So that in itself, we have to hire a part-time custodian to help us run the building. So it's, that's what's the square footage on that building? 20,000 square feet?
More than that. Just the 3 floors itself is like 30,000 plus the gym in the back. So it's pretty significant. And our service contracts that we have to maintain this building and this building.
So, and the other thing that again is and again, we'll do whatever everyone wants, but we've split out recreation, and there's a lot of stuff going on at recreation. And this will be, to Patty's point, how much we can do every year, but there's a lot of driving that, there's a big momentum for recreation and what's going on in recreation. But I have a recreation department that doesn't have a secretary or an administrator. There's no person answering telephones or being in the office. And so again, your kind of hands are tied of looking for, splitting out and what you want to do for recreation. And we have a new building. So again, my whole point is that we're closer to 4% for sure.
Okay. So we've talked about, do you look like you have a thought, Patty, before I move on?
I did, and it's gone. So it's
Well, if I had to say if I wanted to contribute a little bit to the conversation, it would be obviously yes, there was, again, it's a continuum, and there were decisions made, i.e. the 1928 building, and that decision was made a number of years back. And we had ARPA money that offset the capital cost of the overall project. But like Kathy said, these projects then have expenses, and they have ongoing expenses. And I think people have to realize, around the table here, that some of these things are here and they're being occupied, and they're going to result in certain expansion of services that need to support that. And I think that's part of, the range is I'm looking for town to understand that those things are going to have to be, those impacts are going to have to be brought into the budget, and then look carefully at the rest of the budget to see where the departments are and the police. Like she said, we're not going to be able to do everything. We're not going to be able to do everything, but I'd like to see the ability to look at these areas to see how much people, where is the floor on some of these new expanded areas, and then see what we do as far as an ultimate, financing piece, the budget.
Well, and a perfect example, Dave, of that is saying that you do things. It's like we're going to be opening up the splash park in the May, and you don't charge typically for splash parks. Right. So that revenue is going to be supported through town, the recreation department to staff it, but that's a service level. It needs a parking lot. It needs amenities next to things. So all of those things are adding, putting stress on the budget, because I think that we've done so much stuff But then again, you guys will make choices, and I think that, I'll try to say, here's what the service level is, and this is where the base is, but here are the things that people have requested, and they'll tell you too about, and I think when they come in, at our first February meeting, I've tried to, they want to express that there is some stress on the organization. There's definitely some stress on the organization of just, growth and demand and what people want. And I think you'll hear that. I think you'll hear that.
Well, that was what I was trying to get at when I was talking. There's this thing we all know it, the Farmington way, right? We do more with less, and it's been true for as long as before your family's been here for how long, right? I mean, it's been the MO, and it's worked. Our served our community very well, right? And what I was trying to allude to was that as we're now in we just finished the first quarter of the 21st century. We're now entering into the middle of the 21st century. The expectations of people that live in our town have changed and are continuing to change and evolve. And so then we have to begin to ask ourselves this question. This is not a one-year question. It's compounded because of the issue of revaluation next year. But this is the question that we're going to have to ask ourselves over the next 5 or 6 years. What is it that we're going to be able to do to respond to the needs of our community, which are real, with also the absolute real expectation and fair expectation that we continue to do everything we can to continue to minimize the burden on taxpayers, right? That's an absolutely fair expectation. And how do we reconcile that is going to be the challenge, not just, this, like I said, this is not a 1-year cycle question. This is a 5-year, 6-year question. And I think the best way to answer that question, or to start answering that question, is to do it in a transparent way. And it's not to suggest it wasn't done transparently in the past. What I'm saying is this conversation has to be in public in some respects. How are we going to be mindful of the fact, as you say, 3%? I get that. We talked about that at the board, many times. But that might not be able. We might be able to sustain that. And so if we aren't able to sustain that, we owe an explanation to the community as to why. Right. And it's not because of some whim of that we're looking to put in sidewalks and in public pools, but because we need a secretary at the recreation department, right? That's the conversation we have to have in a public way. And so that's why I think this is the first step, hopefully, in a multi-year, realistically, conversation, so that we have, because it's our responsibility, I think, as leaders in the community, to bring the town along in that conversation.
And I think, Bill, we've talked about it. You haven't heard, but for the new people, but I've talked about it quite a bit, is that the organization in general on the town side is changing. It's changing. The people are changing. How we do business is changing. We have run our organization for 25 years with very limited employees, and we backfill with overtime and things like that. And it's the Farmington way, and that's how we've done things. But as you know now, is that people don't want overtime. It's a different society. It's a different way. So we have staffing levels throughout our whole entire organization that's like 25 years old, and now you have an organization that people want their time off. They don't want the overtime. They don't want things. And you don't have the volunteer base, because this is not just us in Farmington, but in the old days, the Booster Club would rake the field on Saturday morning. And now, or then we'd have our guys come in on Saturday for overtime to do it. Now our guys don't want to come in. There's the Booster Club doesn't have the time to do it. And these finishes that we are very proud of, that we want the town to look nice, we just don't have the staffing to go out and cut the trees and make it all look nice. And it's just, we don't have the staff, and no one wants the overtime to do that. So again, a conversation where it's just, we have built the organization one way, and it's changing. That's how it is.
I really like the conversation over the past couple of minutes, because I think it really reflects that we now live in a world that's defined by Amazon in terms of services. Your package is 8 minutes away. People are consumers first, and they see all these things, and we have to reflect that. Now, we can't always meet that services, but we're going to have to change. And I think technology is going to be a big part of how we're going to be able to address the future of Farmington. You can see that AI and other things are changing society permanently on a go-forward basis. And we have to use our smarts looking forward looking and the things that we're doing, because too often I think these processes, these budget processes, others are rearward looking. This is what we did before. This is what we'll do next. It's incremental change. I think we need to prepare the town for what's coming. And I think a lot of change is coming, and we need to analyze that and really get out front for it, which is why I like a lot of the things we've put into the strategic plan, because it has a lot of sense of preparing Farmington for the future. And I think we are in a good place by doing that.
Well, I think, Bruce, one of the things that I think you'll find interesting when we do the budget is the technology on the other side. Like, you see how much the school people know how much they're putting in for the technology side. You'd be amazed now on the town side how much money we need on the technology, but you're saying how technology is changing. Again, I'm going back to the police department, where now the police department has body cameras, storage, they review all of that's technology, and the cost of all that technology in their budgets that used to be $100,000 for all the technology is now $500,000 to keep up with everything that the report writing. All the cops have computers in the cars, all the cars have to be updated, all the reports, all the body cameras. So that's all technology too, where before in the past where you had very little on the town side, what I'd call on technology, in comparison now where our whole budget, we don't have enough technology. It's like you're always, and a lot of them are sole sources. And so, on the police side of things, dispatch and what goes on in there and everything that goes. So it'll be an interesting discussion because technology, it's both to make us more efficient, but also the cost of technology for everyone that has phones and everyone that has this and all the police. It's just it's a huge undertaking.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to find ways to save with technology as well. And I don't mean that will mean less people.
Right.
I think what I'm really implying is we need to find better ways of doing things and using technology to help us do more with the same people that we have.
Right. Yes, for sure.
Any other comments? Because I think I just want to start off by saying, Kathy, you and your team run an awesome town, and we couldn't thank you more for everything that you do and what you have made of Farmington. So thank you for doing that. And looking at the things that you have outlined here in terms of the things that we have to look at for the operating budget, all the things that we heard from Joe that are in our plan and all the things that are not in our plan, the things that we have in our strategic plan, and the X factor things that we don't even know are coming. In the past, I don't know that it's been a luxury, sometimes been a burden, but we've come up with a number, but we've never been always on it. We've been under, we've been over it. To me, that is a range. Mm-hmm. So I think I want to give you, Kathy, what you need with a target. But I think because this is a moving target, I think a range is really appropriate and gives you something to work with. And it also gives us the flexibility to not address the target, but to address the needs of the town and take at least understand what is needed before we decide where we're going to wind up in terms of what we're going to do for, a budget. So I'd like to see if we are in agreement with at least using a range. It seems like we are. We're in the somewhere 3 to 4 range, but again, it's a moving thing, and we don't know. But it gives our excellent team the opportunity to tell us what youth, as you said, Kathy, you think we might be around 4, and there's a lot of things that we need to consider that we don't even know that we need to consider, and we won't know until we speak with your team. So if I said a 3 to 4, you guys want to adjust that? Are you comfortable with that? Bill?
I think it probably should be more than half.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
3, I have no problem.
3 to 4.5. It is. This thing is not cast in stone. It's a range. 3 to 4.
I think 3 to 4.5 is a
3 to 4.5
is a fair range. Fair
4.5.
Cool with that, Nadine?
I wouldn't go. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dave.
I wouldn't personally. I wouldn't vote for something over 4. I mean, if 4 is the maintained budget, I think the idea of giving a target of maintain and then see where we can be at, I think is a fair exercise to do. There's just a dramatic difference between 0.5% when you look at the numbers. I mean, just like back of napkin math, you know, it's $1.3 million, something like that. Don't quote me on that.
No.
So that's me. And I think that's, again, when we talk about flexibility, I came in significantly lower. But to me, if you approve a range of 4.75, then we're accepting that plus whatever the cherry on top could be, given that we've been over recently. Even 4% stuff, but I really trust what Kathy's saying. If she's saying that 4 is the maintained budget, and my opening statement was I don't want to backslide on services in town, then I can see that. So.
So again, this being an arbitrary range now.
Yeah.
If we find that for whatever reason it is more than 4, that is a decision we're going to have to make in that moment.
Correct.
If we say 4,
The only reservation I have is we don't know what the school budget is yet.
yeah, there are a lot of things we don't know, and that's why a range is the closest that we are comfortable coming up with, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the school's going to do what the school's going to do. I just know that I remember very specific conversations with departments where, like, I was liaison for library, where they said, "Where do we look like for budget?"
Right.
They said we're looking like a 3% budget thing. And I said, "Okay, I think we can work with that." They came in slightly under. It was, they got everything that they needed. They felt supported, and so I'm not saying that we need to do 3. Then I get the range. It's nice. I just know. Maybe I'm just Mr. Spendthrift. I just know if I was in a department and I got a range, I'm going to come. If it was 4.75, I'd probably come in at like 4.5. I'd be a little bit under, but I'd be close, So that's just me, and I've taken it up.
And then I would ask you a bunch of questions about why you came in at 4.5.
Listen, clearly I'm not convincing enough, but I like to think I'm a pretty convincing person. I think I would get whatever I wanted. There's no one coming in. I don't want to make anybody that works in town sound like they would, they use. I don't want to disparage used car sales, that's just the analogy, but that they would come in here and try and just get stuff for their department for the sake of getting it. We know that there are needs. Every year we hear the stories about how people are creative. I know that nobody is advocating for the death of the Farmington Way, but I think like an evolution of that, where we are saying like, this is a municipality, the splash pad, it would be lovely to, like, I'm like, oh, maybe that could be an opportunity for us to make some money, sell some snow cones, really like cash in. Probably not. We're probably not going to make money on that deal, but maybe, but just being creative is what we've always done. So a maintained budget. And then if people come in and there are needs, I get it. Again, we have examples where we weren't handcuffed by hard numbers.
I feel like I have direction. I think that I have good direction. And again, like I said, you can't do it all in 1 year.
Yeah.
I'm not going to come in. I'm not going to change over and bring in a budget. If I brought in what everyone wanted, we're talking like a 9% budget.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And so I want to look at it. We have to go through it. I have to see if we can put some people. But like I said, and you guys can make the choices. And as I typically do, I can tell you when, if we're struggling on certain areas that, that looks like we need either more. And I'll try to come in to maintain where we're at, look for savings and see where we're at. Come in as close as I can.
Okay, you feel you've got enough information
Yes.
from us?
Yep.
Is everyone comfortable with the information we've shared and what Kathy's going to be doing for us?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, let's move on to agenda item D4.
I make a motion that the town of Farmington and the town of Avon establish a joint subcommittee for the America 250 celebration. And
Second.
Any discussion?
We don't.
We're doing it rather than
I don't
that the
have
town of Farmington and
the voting
town of
members.
Avon establish. We do have a couple of the.
That's-
The town council liaison would be myself, and we have a first district representative. It's Rafina Bacchus Lee, who has offered to do it, and I have not heard from the second district representative, but we can move forward with it and add them afterwards. Is that correct?
Yep, that's fine.
Any discussion on that?
I think it's imperative, actually, we get it up and done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Question.
Oh, no question. Sorry.
Oh.
Sidebar.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
Just talking out of turn, Brian. I'm sorry.
That's all right. All right. So,
So to make it clear, I'm amending the motion to appoint Brian Connolly as the town council liaison and Rafina Bacchus Lee as the Farmington resident.
correct.
Okay.
Jesse will be very happy.
Okay, any discussion? We're all set. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Any business? I don't think you have any.
There's no other business?
I make a motion to adjourn the January 27th, 2026 Farmington Town Council meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.